When you start changing your mindset and you realize that your job is not to try to convince anybody to buy from you. I don't believe that at all. Your job is to understand, am I talking to somebody who has a need or a want? Mm-hmm. Do I have something that would meet that need or want? And then here's the kicker. Do I have permission to put that solution in front of them? And if so, the conversation gets so much easier.
Introducing the Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hey there, just popping in quickly. It's April Roberts, and I wanted to thank you for being a loyal listener of the Vixen Voice. It means so much to me. And because of that, we're going to be popping in these little announcements because I want you to be the first to know what's going on at the Vixen Gathering. So if you haven't done so yet, click the link below and check out the Vixen Founders Collective. The members who are already in are raving, and we would love to have you join us in the ultimate business consulting, networking, and personal growth community for Gen X female founders. See you there. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Vixen Voice. Today, my guest is Nikki Rausch. Nikki is the CEO of Sales Maven, and Nikki transforms the misunderstood process of selling. I'm not going to tell you any more than that now because I want you to tune in and find out exactly how she does it. And if some of you are already feeling icky because you don't like talking about sales, hang in there because this episode is for you. So stay with us. So Nikki, welcome. So glad to have you today.
Thank you, April. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, me too. I am a nerd about this topic, and I love that you help the business owners you work with to sell authentically. I think that's so important and what's missing in our world today. So I'm going to be a nerd, take notes. I am all ears as you're talking. So I'm super excited. And I just want to mention that you have a podcast as well, Sales Maven. So if you want to dig deeper in sales, go check out Nikki's podcast. So she works with clients all over the world, and she brings an absolute unique perspective after 25 plus years of selling herself. So really, she is the sales maven herself. So before we get started, Nikki, I love working with women, and I love working with women who've kind of lived a life, right? So we've already had a past experience. You were an amazing saleswoman, and now you teach sales and you coach and you help entrepreneurs. And one thing I've learned is that we women are very multifaceted. And so I'd love to just kind of start and ask you, what is, and you feel free to, just intuitively, whatever pops up, because I'm sure you have many stories. What do you feel is a pivotal story in your life that really helped create like this amazing, like sales maven we see before us?
Well, I have kind of two that come to mind, but the first one is, okay, so I was working for one of the larger companies in the world at the time, and I was their top producing rep in North America. I sat down with our VP of sales, who was my boss's boss, and expressed my interest in kind of furthering my career within the company. And he very candidly said to me, "They'll never promote you." And I was so stunned and shocked. And I said, well, why? Like, why do you say this? Again, top producing rep in North America for this company, bringing in $33 million in sales for them every year. And he said, they won't promote you because you're a woman. And I was like, noted.
Wow.
Thank you. That's incredible feedback for me. So I left. the company. It was that like, okay, it was such a pivotal moment to get that type of feedback that let me know that I wasn't on the right path, because I wanted, I knew that there was going to be something else for me. I just didn't know what it was, but it was good to know that it wasn't going to happen here in this organization. So that was great. It was so helpful. Right. And then the other one that comes to mind really is I never planned to have my own business. I really
Love it.
thought like, I'd been in sales. I had a lot of success there. I was making really good money. And I got a little burnt out. I started helping somebody grow their business. And while I was helping this person grow their business, I started hanging out with entrepreneurs. And I come from the tech space, sales, selling technology, and hanging out with entrepreneurs, and specifically women entrepreneurs. And it was the first time that I was like, oh my gosh, I now know what is missing in my life, because I'm surrounded by all these women that have this thing that is missing for me. And the thing that was missing was passion. Like I was really good at what I did, but I didn't feel passionate about it. And I was just surrounded by all these passionate women. And I literally wanted to just rub up against them, like rub shoulders and be like, maybe some of that passion will rub off on me. And so I just started helping some of them that were struggling to make money in their business. And the thing that was the struggle for them oftentimes was the sales conversation. But I knew how to do that. And so I just started hanging out with them as much as they'd let me. And if they wanted, suggestions on how to improve their sales conversations, I was giving it to them. And this woman one night after a networking event pulled me aside and said, Nikki, why aren't you teaching women how to do this? Like, why don't you start a business? And I said to her, that's dumb. Who would ever pay me to learn these things? Like, it's so easy. And she's like, Nikki, people will pay you. And Sales Maven was literally born from that conversation. It's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my career.
I love it. It's so funny. I don't think I've ever shared this on this show, but I accidentally became a financial advisor in very much the same way, which is the business I had before this one that I sold, because I had moved back from Milan, where I was married to an Italian. I was going through a divorce. He had been an addict, so I was trying to piece my life together, right? And I was doing law by day, and my dad was a financial advisor, retirement planner who did dinner seminars. Well, his assistant retired, and he was like, oh, I'm looking for someone new. Can you help me? I was like, yeah, in the meantime, do you want me to come to your dinner seminars and, greet people and seat them? And he was like, sure. And I just wanted to do it to hang out with my dad, and because I thought it'd be cool, right? And so I showed up, and I'm like, welcoming them, seating them, chatting them up. And then the next day my dad's like, can you call them and see if they want to make appointments? And I'm like, yeah, 100% appointment set, right? And then my dad's like, you really need to join me in business. But I was just having fun, and I love people, and I wanted to be with my dad. And, that snowballed and left to me training with him and then moving to Houston and opening my own practice. But I love that story that you shared, because sometimes I actually have some clients who are intentionally leaving corporate to start their own business, and they're in a luxurious space where they don't have to start right away. And there's so much stress about what to do. And I'm like, just find something you enjoy. So these stories are great to share.
Sometimes it's just saying yes, or saying like, I think I could do that. Yeah. That will lead you someplace that you would never, ever guess for yourself. And yet it can be so rewarding.
No, I agree. In fact, you'll appreciate this being in sales. So then from the appointments I set, my dad's like, well, can you keep calling them? My dad closed like a ridiculous amount of business off these seminars. And then he like marched across stage as number one in the company. And they were like, what's your secret sauce, Paul? And he was like, my daughter's calling all the clients. So that's how I got into business. He had like a record year.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What a great story.
Yeah, and it's a good story to remember. You don't have to take sales so seriously. I mean, I want to hear from you. You're the expert, but it's really a transference of energy. It's building a relationship. It's being a real person. And that's why I got so excited to have you on the show, just to hear that you really help women sell successfully and authentically. So, Nikki, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, how do you work with your clients? What do you think the keys are?
there's a huge misconception, first and foremost, when it comes to sales. And this is often what keeps, especially women, holding themselves back in the sales conversation, is because there's this misconception that sales is something that you do to another person. And that's wrong. Actually, sales is something you do with another person. And when you're doing something to somebody, that feels manipulative. That feels gross. That's why people are like, I don't want people to think that I'm salesy. People are going to judge me. But when you start changing your mindset and you realize that your job is not to try to convince anybody to buy from you. I don't believe that at all. Your job is to understand, am I talking to somebody who has a need or a want? Do I have something that would meet that need or want? And then here's the kicker. Do I have permission to put that solution in front of them? And if so, the conversation gets so much easier. And it takes all that pressure and it takes all the ick out, because now we're talking to somebody who has a need and who's said to you, tell me more, or please share with me how I can solve this problem or get this need met. And now you're just showing up being of service, which I think a lot of us as women, we want to be of service, right? Like we have a natural kind of go-to, let's make a positive impact in the world. So a lot of times just reframing for my clients what that conversation is and how it flows, it takes all the pressure off. You know, I do give my clients scripts if they want them, but typically they're specific to their business, because this idea of like, oh, I'm going to grab this script and I'm just going to read it word for word. Well, now you're talking at people. You're not talking with them. And so, yes, you should have and can have scripts that are going to help you be successful, but they need to be things that you would actually say, because trying to sell like somebody else is where that inauthentic, like kind of ick factor comes in. But being yourself, you're perfect. Every single person listening to this call, you're perfect. And I truly believe that everybody can learn how to sell successfully. It's just having the confidence and some structure to the conversation that allows you to know, where am I in the conversation? What might I say or do next that would make it easy for this person to continue down this path with me? And if I have permission with them, then it's my job to guide it. And now all the pressure's off.
Yeah, I love your idea of permission, because it's so true. And even sometimes, usually you're granted permission, but even sometimes perhaps asking permission if you're further down the process, right? Like,
Yes,
I know
yes.
one thing my dad taught me, he would say to clients, and he genuinely meant this, is it okay if I talk to you like my brother or my sister? So for me, our clients were older, retiring, and I'd be like, hey, is it okay if I talk to you like a member of my family? And, you know, once you get that permission, you can guide them and kind of say whatever you want that's in their best interest, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And so when people feel like, oh, I've given you permission to, you know, say whatever you're going to say next, now they're more likely to want to hear what you're going to say because they've granted you that permission, right? There's nothing worse than, I mean, we've probably all experienced this, you know, showing up in a networking meeting or opening your email in the morning and having people tell you like, here's all the things that's wrong with your website and here's why you should hire me to fix it. And it's like, well, first of all, I don't know you. I definitely didn't give you permission to just bash my website. And now you want me to give you money? Like, no, that doesn't feel it. That just feels kind of, frankly, gross and manipulative. And that is the kind of sales that I think hinders those of us in business, because we don't want to be seen that way. We don't want to come across that way, but we see it done all the time. So we think that that is how sales is supposed to be done. It's not. They're doing it wrong. You can do it right. And you can do it in a way that feels really good to you and really good to the person that you're in conversation with.
Yeah, my new favorite is the SEO on your YouTube channel. You have great content, but the SEO on your YouTube channel needs work. And they will put it as a comment under your video on YouTube. And it's like, okay, you're putting this on my YouTube. How do you think this is going to make me want to work with you? I'm kind of confused here. The other day I was like, thank you. Like I'll write nice notes. Like, thank you so much for your feedback. I have a team taking care of that. I appreciate you, or something like that. I'm just like, okay, whatever.
You're nicer than me because I just hit delete and I think to myself, go kick rocks. Like, seriously, I'm not interested in your critique of me. I didn't give you permission to rip me apart, but no thanks.
Well, in my mind, I'm like, you know what? It's another comment. It's driving the algorithm up, and I have a chance to show up as a graceful person that I am. So this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I support that too. Yeah, be you, be authentic, be yourself. And if that feels in alignment, by all means. But just because somebody wants to try to get your business doesn't mean that you owe them anything in return. They have to earn it. It is always your job to earn somebody's business. And if that's why the permission piece is so important. If you're not thinking about it from the perspective of, I actually need to show up and earn this. It's not given. It's not, no, none of us are entitled to anybody's business. We need to earn it. And those people need to earn your business too.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, viewing sales as serving, I mean, because you're really guiding them if you can help them or not, right?
Yeah, for sure. The whole idea is you want to guide, but realistically, in order to guide, you have to first what's called pace. So this is going to be a little bit of my background in neuro-linguistic programming. I don't know if we talked about that, but I have a pretty extensive background in neuro-linguistic programming. And if that's a new term to you, April, or anybody listening, it's really the study of communication. So in NLP, that's what they call it for short. And just to give an explanation, if it's a new term, neuro is the way we process information in our brains. Linguistics is language. And then programming is about habits and patterns. And if you are just standing, let's say you're standing kind of at an event somewhere, kind of in the corner, you don't know anybody, and somebody comes up to you, grabs your arm and says, "Follow me." You're going to be like, no, thanks. Like, I'm going to take my arm back. I don't know you. I don't know where you're, planning to take me. And I'm not sure I want to follow you. That is somebody just coming in and being like, oh, I'm in charge. I'm going to lead this, right? And most of us won't kind of go along, or we might go along for a little bit to try to be kind and nice, but for the most part, we're a little bit annoyed by it. Now, the other option is you have to pace the person first. Going over and, having a conversation with somebody and saying, would you be open to following me as I lead you somewhere? People are much more likely to go, sure, okay, because they know what's going to happen. You have to pace before you lead. So in order to guide a successful conversation, you have to have built some rapport. You have to have that permission from them, right? And they have to know what's going on and have kind of an idea of what's going to happen, because most of us don't want to walk into anything blind, right? Like we're like, it kind of invokes that fight, flight, or freeze in us that, it's kind of a natural ingrained thing for most of us. And I know that sounds a little bit dramatic in a sales conversation, fight, flight, or freeze, but it actually does show up in sales conversations. And totally. If you're not pacing before you take the lead in a meeting, fight will show up with a combative type client, somebody who is contradicting you, or somebody who's aggressively pointing out where you're wrong or why what you're saying is, off. The whole idea of flight will be like, they'll try to get out of the conversation as fast as possible, right? They'll try to leave that conversation. Right. And then the freeze shows up where they're just kind of stunned and they don't really engage at all. And you feel like you're not getting anything back. They're not asking questions. They're not even nodding. They're not giving you any clues as to, are they engaged in the conversation? And so you've got to create safety with people. And that means you have to pace them first.
Yeah, and I it's so funny. I always think of the scenario when having this conversation of, if let's say you're going to the mall, you need a blue pair of pants for something. You're very specific, right? You walk into a store and a salesperson comes up hey, Nikki, can I help you? You automatically say no, even though this person could probably take you to this perfect pair of blue pants in 2 seconds and you could be out of there, right? And it's just something built into our system when we're not ready for that. And I just think most people can relate. And, when I walk into a store, I'm like, sure, do you want to follow me around and show me everything in this size appropriate for this? And I can get in and out of a store so quickly, but we have to fight that, that immediate response to say, no, I'm good. I'm fine.
Yeah, because we have our guard up a little bit of, right? Or like, I don't know how this person's going to be. Are they going to try to, I'm here for blue pants, but they're trying to sell me, skirts and jackets and things that I have no interest in. And they're all bright, yellow, which is not in my color scheme or, whatever. And it's like,
Right.
they're not even caring or showing any interest in what's important to me. What are my needs? And so, in sales, the other kind of thing that I think is so crucial is asking questions. Right? Never make assumptions about what somebody wants or needs. Ask questions. They're going to tell you. And if you create safety with them and you pace them and then get permission to lead, they're going to be so much more comfortable in the conversation, which means not only will they be more revealing about how to earn their business, they'll be more open to hearing your suggestions and recommendations because they feel now safe in this conversation with you. It's like, oh, this person doesn't just see me as a big wallet walking into the store or or showing up on a Zoom call with them. They're treating me like a person, and that feels better.
Yeah. And you don't accomplish that by using their first name every sentence, because I've had those sales calls too. It's like, I do not want to hear my name again, please.
Oh, that feels so, it's one of those things that names are important. I do think names are important, and learning how to say somebody's name properly is an important question to ask. Mm-hmm. But reiterating their name in every sentence, we all know it. It's one of those tired sales tactics that frankly feels kind of icky at this point. So yeah, using somebody's name over and over and over again it starts to feel like, oh, this person's just trying to manipulate me versus like we're in a real conversation. So yes to learning people's names, yes to using it, but using it as a tactic, not good.
No, I agree. And when it comes to assumptions, I always like it. If you, even in role playing, I feel, and I'm curious what you recommend to your clients. I mean, if you're in a genuine sales conversation where you're being sold something, right? Like you're the salee and you're not wasting the person's time just to have the call. I feel you can learn so much because you can feel when they're making assumptions about you and you understand how it feels to be in that seat, right? And so I'm a huge fan of, if I'm genuinely interested, I'm going to hear your sales pitch because I want to feel what feels good to me and what doesn't feel good to me and learn from that way. And what was interesting, I used to love doing role playing in my financial firm, and I feel like you can feel it even in role playing because it's so natural to us. It's not as good as when you're actually being sold to, but I'm curious, what's your take with your clients on role playing and kind of playing the opposite side?
I think it's really helpful for people who are comfortable with it. I will say many of my entrepreneurs are like, the idea of role playing scares the heck out of them. So that's something that very few of my clients actually want to do. One of the ways that we get around this is sometimes I'll encourage them to, with permission of the person they're in a conversation with, record that call and then let me critique the call with them in a live coaching call so that I can point out, like, notice that the person actually said this here, and that is a buying signal. And so when you get that buying signal, here's what you want to say. You might have missed it here, but here's what we can do now. We can go back. Here's how we would approach this person. Or, here's all the things that you're doing really well and probably have reached a point for you that is what's called unconscious competence. Like you're just doing it because it's so ingrained in how you are, which is awesome, except for if you're trying to improve your skills. Sometimes you need to be able to have somebody point out to you, this is really working for you and here's why, because then it reinforces to you of like, oh yeah, so I know that I'm doing that in these situations, but how can I take that and use it in these ones that don't feel as successful. So being able to have a coach that can identify, here's some of your unconscious competence. Here's things that, you're maybe unconsciously incompetent about, or some things that maybe you're consciously incompetent about that we can improve on so that you can just continue to level up your skill level. And the more confident you are in a sales conversation, the easier it is, not just for you, but frankly for the other person. Because as the buyer, we want to buy from people who are experts. We want to buy from people who seem genuinely interested in serving our best interest, right? And there's nothing worse than talking to a salesperson that doesn't feel comfortable in the conversation. And we make assumptions, right? Because we all make assumptions. We make assumptions like, oh, maybe they don't think I can afford this, or maybe they don't think I'm the right person for this offer, or they don't know what they're talking about. And it's usually just based on like their nerves, or like they're missing signals in conversations. So when their confidence goes up, now I feel even better about my buying decision, because I feel like, oh, I'm working with somebody who really is on their game. They know their stuff, and I feel really good about the investment I just made.
Yeah, I love that point of view. I also love that you really, as you said, with the person's permission, are able to watch and critique specifically what your clients are doing. Like, that's invaluable versus like, here's a sales script, go do it. Because all of us are naturally good at something. So when you talk about the unconscious competence, it's not just important to think, oh, okay, I could leverage this someone else, but to understand that you do that well, because one thing we do is sometimes we stop doing the thing that's working, right? So we have to understand, okay, I'm good at this. Let me keep doing this, because we're our own worst critic.
Well, it's just like, the story that I shared of somebody saying to me like, Nikki, why aren't you teaching people these selling skills? And I thought, well, that's dumb. Who would pay me for it? And yet it's it's like, of course somebody would pay you, because it resides in my unconscious competence. I needed somebody to point out to me, like, people will actually value these skills. And so it's that saying, you've probably heard it 1,000 times, like, you can't read the label inside the bottle. It's so hard to recognize the things in ourselves that really assist us in achieving success. And so having somebody who knows how to like pay attention to it and comment on it and then help you maximize it. Well, now it's like, okay, now again, it's always about up leveling.
Yeah, I completely agree. So in up leveling, well, before we go there, I have a question for you, because I have this theory, and I'm sure I read it in a book somewhere. It's not my thought, that there's like a 90-day cycle where you kind of have to resell yourself on what you're selling every 90 days, because it's like natural human tendency for enthusiasm to wane. So do you have any like structure? Do you notice any patterns like that when you're working with your clients?
I haven't heard that specifically, but I think that makes sense, right? Like, hearing you say it to me, I'm like, okay, I get that. I do think, well, there's a couple things that I do with my clients that I think will reinforce. And so I'll give this in case this is helpful for anybody listening, that will reinforce to your clients the value that they get from working with you. And so one of the things that I do at the end of a session with a client is I'll take a couple minutes and I'll say, now, what are your biggest takeaways and what are your action items as a result of what we did together today? And I don't want to tell them, like, here's your takeaways, here's what you need to go and do. Yeah. I need them to come up with it in their own brain and then hear themselves with their own voice in their own ears, reaffirming the value that they received. Now, that does a bunch of stuff for the client, right? Because now they're like, oh, having this session with Nikki, I now feel, so much better than when we started. I now have an action plan. I'm going to do these things. And so it reaffirms the value. But the other thing it does for you as the coach or as the seller in this particular case is it gives you unbelievable feedback. Because sometimes what my clients will share as their biggest takeaway from something that we've done together maybe for me, again, was one of my unconscious competence type things that I think is almost like a throwaway. Like it doesn't really like, okay, we talked about it, but doesn't really resonate with me. But when I have clients will comment on things that really hit home with them, and I get a couple people saying like, Nikki, when you did this or when you showed me that, and then I go, oh, that's great feedback for me, because now I need to talk about the fact that I do this, and I need to make sure that it's a part of the offer so people understand the value that they're going to get. So that would be my suggestion on how to maybe help along with that 90-day cycle that you're talking about.
Yeah. Keep them engaged. I love that, getting constant feedback and moving along. And, one thing, especially the world's so different since 2020, right? So I have a friend who's writing a book like networking for introverts because she interviewed me about something. But if you're an introvert or an extrovert, the rules have changed of engagement. And a lot of people are very nervous about that first interaction, right? Be it at a networking event, via DM, via Zoom. And so, Nikki, are there any tips you can give like, a positive first impression that really makes a connection?
Yes. So I, just so you know, because you brought up introvert, extrovert, I am an introvert. And most people are kind of surprised, like you're in sales and you're an introvert. Yeah, I absolutely am. So I love the introvert. I love the extroverts too. Like I feel inspired by them, but I'm an introvert. And so whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, one of the things that is important when you're wanting to engage with somebody is, in order to engage with them, you need to ask them a question and get their brain thinking about answers. And that can work in DMs and it can work in live conversations as well. And so one of the things that we forget is, because we're thinking like, well, I'm in a networking meeting, or I'm going to take the time to send this DM, so I need to tell people who I am and what I do. But the thing is until somebody knows you, they really don't care who you are or what you do. They only, like, most of us think the whole world revolves around us. Like this is normal. We think that everything that happens is happening for me, to me, or against me. Like that's just the nature of human beings. And so if you want to engage somebody's brain, you start with a question. And there's actually a term for this. It's called instinctive elaboration, I think. And the idea is our brains are wired for questions. Our brains are kind of like Google. If you go to Google right now and you type in anything, Google is immediately trying to give you answers. Doesn't always hit the mark, doesn't always get it right, but it's trying. And our brains are the same way. So if you ask somebody a question, whether it's in DM or whether it's in a live conversation with them, they have to purposely try to think of something else to not want to answer the question. And so a lot of times in DMs or emails or whatever, we start with saying things like, I hope you're well. That's not engaging. That's talking at somebody. But if you really want to engage their brain, ask them, how's your week going? Ask it as a question, right? Like you don't have to say, I hope you're well, because that's talking about me and what I hope. And they don't know me yet and they don't care. And starting a message saying like, I'm Nikki Rausch, I'm the Sales Maven. And they're like, who cares? Don't care at all. But if I start with a question, is growing your revenue this year important to you? Yep. Right? Like what could the question be that's specific to your business? And not just specific to your business, but specific to the person you're trying to engage with, right? So I know for me, a lot of times I'll ask somebody if I'm talking about, if I get a sense that they would be interested in what I offer, I would say, how often are you doing consultation calls with prospective clients? Mm-hmm. And are you able to close 75% or more? Now, those two questions imply something, right? Like if you're doing consultation calls, there's maybe a chance Nikki can help you with that. If you're not closing 75% or more, there's probably a really good chance Nikki could help you with that. So what could you ask as a question? Because frankly, if I ask somebody, are you doing any, like, do you do consultation calls when you're talking to prospective clients? Now it gives the person to say, I do, and I hate them, or, oh, I love doing consult calls, right? Like, and now we have a real conversation going versus like, hey, I teach people how to close 75% or more of their consultation calls. They're like, don't care. Who else can I talk to at this event?
Totally agree. because, everything's about creating curiosity. And I am not trained in NLP, but, I love the concept of open loops, which I think is what you're doing with the questions. But we're trying, we know we're all bombarded with things right now. We're all, research. I'm a certified high performance coach, and research has shown people actually aren't working more now. It's just this constant bombardment from social media, email, text messaging, screens, etc. That's why everyone feels more depleted at the end of the day. It's not actually the depth of the work. So what you have to do is find a way to break through the noise. And so I love what you're doing because it's a very human, real way to break through the noise.
Yeah, and you mentioned creating curiosity. That is like one of the most important things that I teach. I have a signature framework for a sales conversation, and there are 5 steps in it. And I call it the selling staircase. I actually wrote my 3rd book around it. And step 2 is teaching people how to create curiosity. And it's the most missed step in the sales conversation. And frankly, if you're not able to create curiosity about who you are, what you do, what you can, provide to somebody, you never get further in the conversation. So you miss the opportunity to earn that person's business. And then here's what I really think is sad is that person misses out on the opportunity of what's possible in their life or business because they don't know what you can do for them yet. And you didn't pique that curiosity. And by not piquing it, you don't really get to go anywhere in the conversation. And frankly, we are all bombarded with so many things. Like, I don't really want to talk about politics or the weather ever again, frankly. Like, I'm so exhausted by both of those conversations, right? So I'd rather have real conversations with people about things that are important to them, that matter to them, and that could make a difference in their life and also in mine too.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to hang on this for a moment because everyone's sitting there listening going, yeah, me too. But we forget that everyone else is also tired of those conversations, right? Because I can tell you, in my Vixen Founders Collective where we have tons of conversations, I hear this from all the members. They're like, if it's not going to be a deep conversation, I'm gone. You've lost me if we're having small talk. And so I would venture to say most of the people you want to be working with feel the same way you do. So just understand that. And I have a friend was one of the, probably still is, I haven't talked to him a bit, top realtors in the country. And they were coming home from a party one time, he and his wife, and she was like, oh my gosh, I said this. And he said, honey, they don't remember a darn thing you said because they're in the car replaying what they said just like you are. And she told me how it changed her whole perspective. And she was like, I no longer second guessed what I said when we were at cocktail parties and different things.
How freeing for her. I love that. And it's so true, right? We're all caught up in what is this person thinking about me? And, what judgments did they have about me? And now, to be honest, people do make judgments. There are judgments. Yes. They actually say within the first 10 seconds, people can make up to 10 judgments about you. And they're pretty significant. Within the first 2 minutes, people make some pretty significant decisions about your credibility, your trustworthiness. There's all these things that happen when you're trying to earn somebody's business. So I do think paying attention to the impression that you're making, but actually the words that you say are so minute compared to the overall impression. They say communication can be broken down into 3 sections. So if you think about it on a pie chart, now, I know there's a few studies out there. I learned the Mahabrian study, which is from way back. And they say there's these 3 sections of pie, right, that make up all of communication. There's the actual words that you choose, right, and say, the actual words that come out of your mouth. Your voice quality. Voice quality is that saying, it's not what she said, it's how she said it. That's what they're talking about with voice quality. Yeah. And then the last category of the pie chart is body language and facial expressions. And so when you've got all of the pieces of pie to work with, so when you're face to face with somebody live in a conversation, that words only make up about 7% of the total pie. It's pretty minute. Now, where the words become absolutely crucial is when it's written communication, because all you've got to work with are the words, right? But then when you add let's say that you add the phone component, right? They might not be able to see your facial expressions and your body language, but they actually get to hear the tone of your voice. And so now the voice quality makes up 38%, right? So now we've got 45% of communication to work with. So that makes sense that when you add in facial expressions and body language, that's the other 55% of communication. Well, now you're really like, what is we're cooking with gas here, because we've got all these pieces to work with. So when you're face to face live in a conversation with somebody, there's so much grace that can be given, right? So give that to yourself. You don't have to be perfect. That's unrealistic to think you're always going to know how to say the right thing at the right moment, like every single time. But if you have intention behind what you're doing, that's going to leave a lasting impression.
Yeah. And, and a lot of the nonverbal you're talking about is so key. Like one of my best friends here in Nashville, like I met her at a networking event. And I walked in the room and immediately I wanted to sit next to her. And she said, the minute you walked in the room, I was like, I have to get to know this woman. And we knew nothing about each other, right? But there is this attraction, right? And so it's real and you want to tap into it. Oh my gosh. Well, Nikki, as I said, I'm a total nerd about this. I think you've shared so many amazing tips. I already wrote down that as soon as we get off, I'm going to Amazon to get the Selling Staircase. So I'm going to start there and digging deeper. So thank you. And I'm guessing all your books are on Amazon. And where else can our audience find you? We'll, of course, share all your pertinent information. But what's the best way for them to follow you and stay in touch?
Well, thank you for asking the question. I'll wrap it around a gift for your audience. So I have an ebook that's called Closing the Sale, and it's all about building your confidence in those sales conversations. And I will happily gift that to your audience if you go to yoursalesmaven.com/ebook. You can download that one for free. And like you said, all of my books are on Amazon. I have 3 books, The Selling Staircase, one called Buying Signals, and one called 6-Word Lessons on Influencing with Grace. And then, of course, there's the podcast, which is Sales Maven. So I know, obviously, your people like podcasts. They're listening to us on a podcast. So check out the podcast. There's tons of episodes there for you to pick and choose what would be interesting and helpful for you right now in your business.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. Before we go, the Vixen Voice and the Vixen Gathering, my company, a big part of what I do is help women really get in touch with their feminine energy. So balancing that masculine and feminine. And that's why I love talking about sales as connection and energy, because these are feminine traits, right? We women really should be superior in the sales role because it's about relationships, connection. It's about listening, right? And so I hate when women shy away from sales because it's kind of natural to us when we're grounded in our feminine energy. So before we hop off, Nikki, I'd love to ask you, since it's your first time here on the show, when do you feel most grounded in your feminine energy or essence? What are you doing?
Well, you know what comes to mind? I don't know if this is a weird answer, so you can tell me. When I'm surrounded by other women, that is when I feel my strongest connection to feminine energy. Now, keep in mind, I was raised by a single dad. I have 3 brothers, so I was around a lot of male energy growing up. My career in technology, I worked primarily with men. And so when I attended my first ever networking meeting where there were 100 women in a room, I was like, again, this was me going I just want to hang out with these super passionate, super amazing people that want to make an impact in the world. So I would say for me, it's being in a room surrounded by other women really ignites that feminine energy for me.
No, it's so beautiful. And when we lift each other up and truly connect with each other, there's nothing more powerful than that. So thank you for sharing that. And then another question I like to ask is, what color is your feminine energy?
I'm going to say it's light pink. That feels very I love pink. I love all shades of pink, but there's something about this light pink to me that even since I was a little girl, I just have loved light pink, and it just feels so like, yep, that's it.
I love it. I love it. I don't know why my niece popped in my head because you said since I'm a little girl and she's 8. And so, her favorite was pink and then it was purple and now it's rainbow because she just wants all the colors.
By all means, girl, have all the colors. I love that.
Yes, so awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. Any parting words for everyone listening out there? Any last tips, either about life or selling or confidence?
Here's what I would say from a selling standpoint, last words, is if there is somebody that's in your kind of atmosphere and that you get a sense that you could help them in some way, here's the question you might ask them. Would you ever consider us talking about working together? Don't be afraid to ask the question. They may not have ever even considered that you would want to work with them. And so by planting that seed, you might open a door that would be so fulfilling, not just for you, but for them as well. So don't be afraid to ask people, like, what would it take to earn your business? Or is there ever a chance that we could work together? And and then be quiet and wait and see what the other person says. It might not be an immediate yes, but it might be that yes that you need 2 months from now, 6 months from now, 5 years from now. You never know.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a fan of, I went to another advisor seminar and they asked me for feedback afterwards. I said, you were phenomenal. You were great. The crowd loved you, but you never told them that you wanted their business. Like, you never told them that they were welcome to come in as clients. I mean, it's this small thing that I feel, and obviously a sales presentation. You're feeding them a steak dinner to potentially get them in the office. Like, there's no elephant in the room. Like, let's go for it. But no, that's just such smart and wise advice because you don't know what journey it's going to open up. Maybe a client, maybe a joint venture, maybe just a networking where they refer other business to you. It's really beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nikki. I could keep picking your brain forever, but I also believe in honoring your time. So we're going to wrap this up. And as we do, I just want to remind everyone, if you want to get more of Nikki, I'm sure you do, follow her, download, go buy her books, reach out to her if you think she can help you. All of her information is in our show notes. And if you don't know how to get those, let me make it real simple for you. Go to vixengathering.com/podcast and just hit subscribe. If you share your email with us every Tuesday and Thursday, all the amazing resources from our awesome guests show up in your inbox. So that's a nice, easy way to handle it. And as we wrap up, I always say the world needs more love. So how are you going to show up lovingly this week? And in the context of our call, be brave. Do what Nikki recommended. If you're feeling called to work with someone, maybe they're feeling called to do the same way. It can be a great act of love just to ask that permission question and step in there. So hope you got amazing value from today. I know that I did. Thank you so much, Nikki. I hope that everyone has a beautiful day, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to today's show notes, including links to all the resources we mentioned, visit vixengathering.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of The Vixen Voice.